Welcome to another industry night with me, your girl Nycci Nellis, where we go beyond the plate and behind the past with the people shaping how and why we eat the way we do. It is a drippy, drippy day here in the DMV and has been for days. So you may hear my dogs barking off in the distance because they don't want to go outside in the rain. That's just the deal. They're big babies. But I'm really excited because today's guests are two chefs that I have genuinely been excited to talk to because what they are doing at the Catbird Seat in Nashville is just so fabulous and wildly ambitious, and it's changing the way people are cooking around the country. So I've got chefs Tiffani Ortiz and Andy Doubrava. They are leading the newest chapter of one of America's most influential tasting menus. So it opened in 2011, the Catbird Seat, and it's operated almost like a culinary incubator. It gives chefs this extraordinary creative freedom at this iconic U-shaped counter and has really helped establish Nashville as a serious dining destination long before much of the country caught on. So, sidebar as a reminder, I was in Nashville in the fall and I had such a delicious time. I took you all with me. So you can go to my Insta highlights or see my Nashville in 48 hours on the list, areyouonit.com. Okay. Enough about me. Now back to the chefs, Tiffani and Andy and Catbird, excuse me. So it has recently relocated. It's supposed to be stunning. And the restaurant is entering another evolution under Tiffani and Andy's leadership. And what makes their story so compelling is that they did not arrive here through the traditional fine dining path. So they spent years living on the road with their two dogs, who I hope to meet, and a Subaru, a cargo trailer, and a traveling larder. They drove more than 45,000 miles through 42 states. They had this nomadic dining project, you may have heard of it, called Slow Burn. And along the way, they foraged, they preserved, they farmed, they bartered, they cooked in some of North America's best kitchen. I mean, I feel like they have a lot of bragging to do when they finally come on and start talking. But they did develop philosophy around sustainability, seasonality, regenerative agriculture, food waste. All of that now appears at the Catbird Seat. So that approach has helped earn them a Michelin star, a James Beard nom for outstanding restaurant. The New York Times has given them recognition, and they have a rep, and they're holding on to it. It's one of the most exciting dining experiences in the country right now. But for me personally, beyond the accolades, which are very exciting, what fascinates me most is how personal this all is. All these techniques, the preservation, the use of every part of the ingredient, the way they balance high level with playfulness, and of course, hospitality. So let's get their story. Tiffani and Andy, welcome to Industry Night.
Hello, thanks for having us.
Hi, I'm so thrilled to have you both on the show with me today. Well, let's kind of start with the beginning. I want to kind of start like before Nashville, before the stars, before Catbird Seat. You two first met in culinary school, like back in 2011. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you met, where did you go to culinary school?
We went to the French Culinary Institute in New York. No, not there anymore, sadly.
I know, RIP.
Yeah.
But you guys met there, but you didn't come together creatively there.
We would be paired together for certain group projects and things like that here and there, but we were really only acquainted and kind of maintained a pseudo friendship from afar, post-culinary school. And when we really connected was when I was doing a little bit of a farm tour, which brought me to California, where Andy had ended up cooking after a couple years in New York.
And where was the spark? What happened?
Well, we were volunteering on a farm in Malibu, which, as you know, by any movie that you've ever seen about
That's good.
California.
That sounds terrible. My
Yeah.
goodness.
So we were working on a Meyer lemon orchard that was also a bed and breakfast that was kind of nestled in the canyons, off of PCH, overlooking the ocean, and just kind of like a really private, little farm. And it was our first kind of delving into agriculture in a hands-on approach. We'd both sourced locally at the restaurants that we had cooked at, but never actually grown our own food. It just wasn't our background. And so this was the first time we were doing that. And so just the excitement of learning something new and kind of connecting through learning that together. And then also, obviously Malibu, breathtaking. We were living in a teepee while we were up there for a little while. There were wild parrots. It was just like a really breathtaking place, and honestly, a pretty impossible place to not fall in love in. So,
I mean, it sounds dreamy. And I feel like you could start your movie there with like the parrots flying above a teepee. And so you're out there and you guys decide, okay, we've fallen in love, but you've learned so much, right? Like being on this farm. And is this where sort of your philosophies start to come together when you start thinking about sustainability and understanding food systems, things of that nature? Because I know how important that is to the two of you.
yeah, I think leading up to that, we both had our own separate approaches, and even sharing the same experience, taking different things away from it. And so I really fell in love with the hands-on process of growing food and finding ways to do that without any waste, and kind of translating that into my cooking style. And I'll let Andy talk to you about how, it changed the way he did things.
Yeah, I mean, I worked at a restaurant that was very the epitome of farm to table, and just taking that to the other side of the table where you're trying to grow the food and harvest it and take care of it all the way until it gets to the kitchen was really just a totally new perspective for me, and kind of just opened my eyes to the responsibility that we really have in the kitchen.
And I'm sure it was really eye-opening. So this is like what, like 2011? Like what time is this about? When are
This
we?
was
2017.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So there has been some
2017.
time in between.
All right. So I guess what I'm asking is like where did you guys like sync up and be like, okay, we want to go across the country with our dogs and sort of explore? Like how did this experience take you to that?
Yeah, so I think that, after I had volunteered on that farm, I had to go back to New York City where I was living, and Andy was pretty settled in California. And obviously, we wanted to maintain that connection. And so he drove across the country to pick me up so that I could move to California and we could be together. And I had already had this mapped out plan of this kind of cross country tour that I was going to be doing from farm to farm, volunteering through a nonprofit called Woof. That helps pair you with organic farms around the country. And so what we did was he ended up joining me on that journey in his little Honda Fit with everything I could fit of my own in the back. And we traveled down the East Coast through the South and then back up north towards LA kind of area in Malibu, where we settled on that farm that we had reconnected on. And so that was in 2017. And I would say that was our first dipping our toes into doing a tour, except this one was completely agricultural, and we kept track of our recipes and stuff throughout our time on all of these different farms, but we just learned so much. Sometimes it was a hog farm, sometimes it was a chicken farm, sometimes it was an orchard or a homestead. Every space was different and had its own experiences to lend. And so by the time we got back to California, I think that we're both just reinvigorated and creatively charged. And at that time, Andy had been at his restaurant for a while and had stepped away. And we decided we are going to do a focus on living on the farm and cooking on the farm and kind of just seeing where that road took us.
So can
Um,
I ask, when you say like you travel to all these farms and you were collecting your recipes, but were you cooking for people on these farms or were you just working the farms? Like I need more info.
Yeah, so that was, I think we've done two tours, I guess, is really where we'll start. The first one was really working with the farmers, cooking for everyone that lived on the property, all of the people that worked with the farms and the farmers themselves. And that was for about, what, 6 weeks, 2 months?
I would say it was probably 2 months, like almost the whole summer. And so we weren't cooking for paying guests. We were cooking for everybody who we were working with on those farms. Sometimes people who owned farms next door would join. And so it kind of became a whole work together, breaking bread together scenario. And so that was the first time that we had toured together and reconnected. And Slow Burn came a little bit later down the line.
Well, let's talk about the creation of Slow Burn. How did that come to be? What was the plan and then what was the execution?
Yeah, I mean, we both, after we had lived on that Meyer lemon orchard in Malibu, both went back to working in restaurants in LA for another 5 or 6 years. And then both really just wanted a change. And, we would sit in our apartment and try to figure out what we wanted that to look like. And the big ambitious idea was to try to do a traveling zero waste restaurant.
Yeah, and I had already had some experience doing guest chef opportunities. Andy was a little bit more stable, had a restaurant, a brick and mortar that he ran in Santa Monica, California, where we lived at the time. And during the pandemic, everything just got shaken up so much. And the restaurant that I helped to open ended up not having outdoor seating and things like that. There were just a lot of, delays in my career. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to, now that everything's been lifted, I'm just going to travel and cook and experience different cities and stuff like that. And through these residencies, I started to realize that there was a little bit of a gap in the industry that maybe I was strange enough to fill with Andy. And so restaurants would typically be closed on a Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday. And doing pop-ups or guest chef opportunities on those days would offer them an opportunity to have some passive income, whereas I'd have the opportunity to temporarily have a brick and mortar that we could operate out of. And so that was kind of the first spark that kind of drew us to the idea of we could probably plan a whole tour around this. And at the time, Andy was planning on stepping away from his restaurant, and we kind of had those late night conversations that led us down the road of, what if this was a little bit of a case study in sustainability? And Andy had the idea of what if we tried to do this tour without any food waste? And that's our goal. If we miss the mark, that's okay. But kind of traveling and exploring those different avenues in different states and different countries and getting to see whether we were all having the same issues in the industry, even though we all lived in different places.
And what were you finding? Because I mean, those are some high bars, and I mean, I applaud the effort. And I talk to so many people in the industry. I mean, eliminating food waste would be, top of the line. Like, how do we best do that? And, figuring out how to work best with farms, dealing with, the vegetables, the gleaning and etc. I mean, all these things are things that people want to do, but sort of run out of time to do, like it's a priority, but it's not that priority. So how were you able to enact all that?
Well, it's definitely a learning curve, especially when you're on the road and you're working in different parts of the country, because we did very much start domestically. Eventually, we did go on to do pop-ups in other countries, but for example, going to work in the high desert in Santa Barbara County, there isn't a lot of access to recycling or even garbage pickup in general. A lot of the times there's, a general hub where restaurants and also residents would drop off at this one specific rendezvous point, and that was their only access to recycling, and it was still very much limited. All of the farms were largely commercialized and not really small mom and pop farms that focused on, organic growing or sustainability. So there wasn't really an outlet for composting either. And so kind of having to tackle those different problems as we were traveling and trying to figure out where to source things like eggs, and also trying to, team up with the chefs about just the general logistics of what was available in the kitchen. That was definitely a really big challenge. And I think we rose to the occasion, and we ended up coming away from it just really with so much more knowledge as to what the general struggles are across the bar when it comes to our industry. And it's something that we kind of channeled towards Catbird 2.0 once we took over too. It's just everything we learned on the road. We made sure we were taking notes of everything that we wanted to do, and definitely everything that we didn't want to do once we were able to settle down.
Well, let's talk about, how did you wind up at Catbird Seat?
So when I had my previous restaurant in California, I had been asked to come out and do a collaboration dinner with the previous chef, Brian. A couple of years passed, and we were in the middle of our slow burn tour, coming to Nashville to do a couple of dinners, and Brian asked us again to cook at Catbird. We sold out the first night so fast that we added a second night.
How many seats was in the original? How many seats was there?
20, I believe.
Yeah, I think 20. I think it was 18 seats was comfortable, and 20 seats was okay. We're really packing them in like sardines, and we have to meet our mark as far as timeline's concerned.
Yeah. I think we realized, later in the year that I think they were kind of scouting us more or less and kind of seeing if we would be a good fit for the next era of Catbird. And that kind of started, I would say, a year and a half worth of conversations. And yeah, here we are. We ended up taking over at the old location. We were there for about 6 months, and now we just passed 1 year at the new location.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Can we talk a little bit about the lore of Catbird Seat? Because it is kind of known as this incubator doing really interesting things over the years since its creation. What did you want to take with that? Can you just talk about like what you knew about it and how you wanted to make it yours in its new creation?
I think it had been known for maybe a bit of rule breaking and innovation. Neither of us had ever cooked at or ran a tasting menu before, so it was a totally brand new thing, which is exciting and nerve-wracking. I was really looking forward to being able to just kind of put the focus into such singular little dishes as opposed to the chaos of a la carte. But what about you?
Yeah, I mean, everything that I knew about Catbird Seat, to be very honest, came through Andy. I've always kind of been unplugged and a little wayward when it comes to like general like industry knowledge as far as like who's who, what restaurant is doing what. And so I get all my news from Andy, so to speak. And so that was my first introduction. And then when he had done his first guest chef dinner with Baxter was when I really got to kind of do a deep dive on Catbird. Obviously you do a little bit of homework in advance. You do some Googling. I was there as a guest while he was cooking with Baxter. So I had the unique experience of coming in just from the other perspective of the kitchen and sitting down and dining at the bar with strangers and getting to know the people around me, having some familiar bites from Andy, but also tasting some of the fun collaborative bites that he did with the team. And so my introduction was a lot more organic. And then afterwards, when they were deciding, okay, maybe we want to start beginning the conversations about Catbird Seat, is when we started to know a little bit more. We sat down with the owners, Max and Ben Goldberg, and then also partner Josh Habiger, who kicked off Catbird Seat. And so that's when we started to piece together some of the history. And that's when I started to hear some of the more familiar names in the industry. And definitely what drew me to the concept was doing something new. Like Andy said, we didn't have a lot of tasting menu experience. I think that's actually something that's true of a lot of the people who have come into Catbird Seat as well. And being able to explore that different facet of the industry and work a new muscle just really drew us to the space. And even now, even hearing it from guests just naturally during service, because we're very guest facing, we hear of some of the history from the locals and the regulars and things like that, just like the fun kind of, like Andy was saying, rule breaking, fine dining, but not stuffy kind of environment, and kind of hearing all of the lore and stories has been really fun.
I bet. And so now in the new space, is it still the same amount of seats, and does it still have the same sort of iconic shape?
Yeah, it's still a U-shaped bar.
Got 5 more seats now.
We got some more seats, so
Okay,
we're
5 more
definitely
seats.
busier now.
How many turns do you do a night?
We do 2, so I think our average right now is probably 46 or 48 people a night.
Yeah. And we also have a little wine lounge that is a little bonus. It's been fantastic for our beverage director, Sarah, but it's also been great for guests because typically Catbird Seat can't host large parties comfortably like a normal restaurant, because it is a bar. And so you guys are sitting side by side. So having a conversation kind of requires a lot of leaning and yelling and stuff like that. And so typically we used to have like some parameters around who we could host at any given time. And now that we have that wine lounge, we have had flexibility to host larger parties. Let's say, it's a graduation celebration or an anniversary dinner that involves the whole family. And so we've got a cool little space to spill over there that we might also be activating for some other secret things later in the year that we're just flushing out now.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
I kind of surprised. I don't know why. I thought that's what you executed with Slow Burn was tasting menu driven. So I didn't realize that this was new for both of you. How do you both work together now to create a tasting menu, and how do you keep your sort of ethos in check while you're doing that?
Yeah, I think we both had a little bit of experience during tour. We tried our best to balance. So we would do was our rinky dink version of a tasting menu, very small, not as many courses as we do currently at Catbird Seat. But we'd also try to find a balance where for every tasting menu that we would do, we would be doing a more financially accessible lowbrow pop-up. And it was always just, kind of fun and loosey-goosey. I would say, like, tasting menu as far as Catbird Seat is concerned, we're probably doing about 10 more courses than we would have been able to do out of the cargo trailer.
How many courses is it? How many courses are you guys doing a night?
Right now, we're between 15 and 18.
Wow.
We change things day to day sometimes. But
and can we talk a little bit about the cuisine that you're actually serving? Like, people who haven't had the opportunity to come, how did you decide what it was going to feel like, what it was going to taste like, what's the narrative of the tasting menu?
Yes, we're primarily using ingredients from the Southeast as far as fresh produce. Some of our proteins come from, a lot of our seafood we're getting from Massachusetts right now, and we're getting a little bit of antelope from Texas. But we really wanted to do kind of our take on Southern ingredients. So we're using a lot of sassafras and spice bush, which is a wild berry that we get around here. But I think our vibe is kind of comfort food on the palate, but a little more.
Yeah. I mean, this is always where we run into a little bit of trouble, because I think that our defined cooking style and service style is that we refuse to commit to one. And I think that's kind of the beauty of Catbird Seat, because also Catbird Seat kind of refuses to commit to a certain style. Also, the chefs are always rotating, just like our ideas and the produce and ingredients that we use are always rotating. And so for us, it feels a little bit more natural to kind of like think on the fly. There's definitely a lot more planning involved because we, do have to consider beverage pairings and guest experience. And now with a Michelin star and all of these other accolades that we never asked for, but are very excited to have, it does have the added pressure where we do need to have a really beautiful and curated experience for guests that is consistent in quality, but also that still feels us, which is so not stuffy and definitely weird and loud and comfortable. Anybody who comes into Catbird, I think their expectation, if they've dined with us before, is that like the music's going to be a little bit punky. It's going to be a little bit louder. You might be eating a fancy chicken wing tonight, or you might be eating mountains of caviar. Like there's no real focus except that we wanted it to feel really balanced and really comfortable and not alienating to guests who are maybe not too familiar with eating out at a fine dining restaurant.
No, that sounds like hospitality to a T, right? Like that's what hospitality is. Nobody should walk into a restaurant, no matter what its lore is, and feel that they don't belong. So I love where your heads are at. I'm curious, Tiffani, especially with all your sort of staging at farms along the way. Did you make new inroads in the Nashville area and the environs with the different farmers there as well?
I mean, funny enough, the first tour that we did in 2017, when we were volunteering on farms, the first one we volunteered on was a homestead in Watertown, which is just outside of Nashville. And I have very vivid memories of us sleeping in the car outside the Johnny Cash Museum, waiting for the sun to rise so that we could show up to this farm, not at a crazy hour, where we, had all of these really cool experiences, learning to cook off the grid using only solar and water collection and stuff, kind of just like the most extreme version of organic
Yeah.
and biodynamic farming. And so that little like avenue was one of our first stops, and that was really interesting. And I think that was our first introduction to like, wow, this kind of stuff does really well here during the summertime. And also experiencing a summer in Tennessee is definitely a little bit jarring the first time because it is very hot and it is very humid, and
Humid. It's very
yeah,
humid.
and
Yes.
at times, the weather can feel almost coastal Mediterranean. And so you can find little pockets of the micro seasons out here where those same ingredients would be available here in Tennessee if you pair with the right farm. And I think that, doing the pop-ups around the country and stuff, you hear whispers of what farms to work with, what farms not to work with. And so, we were immediately paired with Bear Creek Farms, who's been a longtime partner and vendor that we work with. Anybody who cooks in Tennessee, in the Nashville area of Tennessee, pretty much uses them for anything beef, anything pork, and then hearing who they recommend. And so it's really just mostly a word of mouth, and then also the really amazing community of chefs that we've met, both on the internet and also in person, have told us like, hey, if you really like this, you should check these guys out. And then they'll send us the vendor information. And so that's just another thing that drew us to moving out here, is like the amazing community of farmers and chefs who reached out to us, knowing our background and our ethos and being like-minded and wanting to work with us just as much as we wanted to work with them. It made it very easy.
It sounds like it. You're so lucky. I love hearing about, because some cities or regions, chefs, farmers, etc. Everybody plays in the sandbox really well, and then some areas, some regions, not so much. So it's so great to hear that in Nashville, everybody's like, let's do this together. Let's have some fun. Um, let's create the magic in the way that you want to do it. I'm sort of curious, as a team together, to so many people say too many cooks in the kitchen. How do you both find your balance working together? And my husband and I do a radio show as well together. I mean, he's not really in the industry, but he pops on for this show. And I mean, I want to kill him some days. It's not easy. So I'm just sort of curious how you two find a balance in working together.
I think it's a daily occurrence of finding balance. You know, as you're saying, like some days are easy and some days are really hard. Like there are days where we're just like at each other's throats and everything in service is going wrong. We're giving our cooks different directions and we're not necessarily so synced. And other days it's just like he's finishing my sentences constantly. And I think that the important thing is like whenever we realize that we're not centered and aligned just in how we manage things and how we cook and how we plan a menu, as we take a beat, we step back and we have those hard conversations when they need to be had. And then we find clarity in those conversations, we make a plan, and then we move forward with it. And I think, you know, patience has taken us a really long way. We did this on the road, which is the absolute hardest way to do it. And we did that for
I
2.5
cannot
years.
even imagine the whole
Yeah.
on the road thing. Like it's like
Yeah.
you people are like aliens to me. Like I have no idea how it's brilliant. And I so admire what you did, but that's not happening for me in my lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, it's like any management team. It's like, you know, there are a lot of ways that our journey was the same. We went to the same culinary school. We had the same journey agriculturally. We had the same tour with Slow Burn, but we've also had our separate experiences in life and career that have just given us different opinions, different skills, different mindsets, different non-negotiables. And so we're kind of always having those conversations with each other and our team. And honestly, we've been doing it now 4.5 years between Slow Burn and Catbird nonstop.
Wow.
And like I
You
said,
need
I don't want
vacation.
to, yeah. And I don't want to like treat it like a fluff story. It is hard and it takes a lot of work, but anything worth doing does.
Well, actually, to that point, I think it's really important to mention all the things you are doing, you know, given sort of everything that people went through with the pandemic, and then the cost of running a restaurant today. You know, we're hearing a lot, raised within margins, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I just feel like that's been said over and over. You all are doing so much, whether it's fermenting, preserving, reusing, you know, scraps, like you're so creative in the kitchen, but that's all work, right? Like doing all those things is a lot of work. How do you go about explaining that labor to your clientele? Because it's so important. It's part of your narrative, and they should, not that every dish should come with a mission or you shouldn't, I'm not saying people's missions need to be shoved down the clientele's throat, but sharing that story, understanding your passions, because your passions, both of yours, wind up on the plate. How do you think that gets expressed best?
I think it's pretty organic when we talk to the guests. I mean, the way that we have the restaurant set up is that the guests walk through a wall of jars, which is just, you know, preserves and projects that we have had in our possession since Slow Burn. And as far as, you know, communicating that to the guests, it depends on the type of person that we're talking to. You know, for example, the chicken wing that we often talk about is a 3-day process. Like it is a chicken wing, but it's a 3-day chicken wing. And the idea there is that hopefully it's one of the best chicken wings you've ever had. And if somebody starts asking about the process of it, that's when we really get into the nitty gritty of what all the work is that we get into.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you come to eat at Catbird, it's a 2.5 hour experience. And the way that the kitchen is set up and just the way that Andy and I have agreed to run the restaurant is that we make sure that we speak to every single guest who sits down. We make sure that one of us runs at least one of each course to each person so that they get the opportunity to meet us and ask us any questions that we have. And it also helps to kind of humanize the experience for us because it's one thing to think that something is going to taste good and that people are going to receive it well. And it's another thing to get that in the moment feedback. And so, having that has been really, really helpful and has really helped to define the experience that we offer and also the experience that we have. We don't like to be preachy about sustainability or locally sourcing or anything like that. But in our spiels, when we're dropping a dish, we'll say, this is something from this farm. It's dry aged on the front end for us. We cure it in this, we cook it overnight. And so just in that small interaction of 60 seconds or less when we're explaining the dish, we're already explaining a technique. We're already explaining where the food came from. And we're letting the guests kind of fill in the gaps. And then if they want to learn more about it, we're definitely there to expand upon the experience. But for the most part, we try not to really bring it up. And I think that's why it works so much. It can be alienating when somebody's kind of throwing their mission and their ethos in your face. But if I'm just putting a plate of snacks in front of you and you're coming up with those questions on your own, it becomes a lot easier to digest.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's part of the, sort of the relationship between the diner and the chef, right? There are some diners that come in and they want to know everything. They want to understand more. And there's some who are just there to eat. And everybody has to decide what the experience is that they want. And it goes back to hospitality, right? Reading the guest.
I think that every guest walks in knowing to some extent what they want their experience to be. Mm-hmm. And a big unspoken labor of the Catbird Seat is we need to find that out over the course of their first couple of courses and to make sure that they have that experience.
Yeah. Right. And trouble at seat, I was going to say table 2, but like trouble at seat 3 and 4, but seats 19 and 20 are in it. Like they want it. They want to know all of it,
Oh, yeah.
That's constant. We're always doing that back and forth during
little Post-it notes we'll pass around the kitchen. Extra spiel for position 33. They ask a lot of questions. Or, the other day our sous chef was like, oh, I just found out that the person that's sitting at position 27 is a soil scientist. And I told them that you're going to want to speak to them. And so if there's little things like that, or if somebody comes in and they're from Florida and one of our cooks is from Florida, we know to send them over there. And so it's almost becomes like a really big dinner party where we're kind of curating every little moment, but almost without thinking about it. And I think that's why it works.
Of course, because you're keeping your finger on the pulse of what's happening in your dining room because you're in the dining room, right?
Mm-hmm.
So because you're both public facing, does something bad happen like once in a while? Like there's a dish that flops? Like how do you handle it while in service? Do you ever get like really into the weeds when it's really happening and you have to keep a smile on your face?
I mean, sure. I think we do a pretty good job of kind of grinding ourselves down before service to do everything that we can to make sure that doesn't happen. When we put a dish on the menu, it's usually takes a couple weeks of tasting and testing and getting different opinions. When something happens during service, we will kind of just the two of us go and talk about it off the line.
You see, he just nudged me
out of view.
He'll send me there. Tiff, I need you to put out a fire at this position. I think that person hates me. And then I'll go out there and hi, I'm Tiffani. I'm going to talk like a baby so you don't be mean to me. Yeah. But for the most part, like I said, everybody already knows what experience they want to have when they come in. So we just need to maintain that energy and that enthusiasm, and putting out fires becomes a lot easier. Bad things are going to happen during service. Statistically, we're serving, 50 people a night, 4 days a week, and we're dropping 18 to 20 plates in front of them. Odds are something bad's going to happen. And usually if we have a weird, awkward sense of humor about it and we're quick to correct or quick to make up for it, the guests end up having an even better time because we end up having more FaceTime with them, and we have this little common experience of like, oh, look at that, we're not perfect, we're humans back here. And I think that usually that kind of just makes it a little bit more fun.
Yeah, I think we've been fortunate that since we've taken over, it at least seems like most of the people that come into the restaurant really want to have a good time, which is definitely in our favor.
Well, I read that you, Andy, have a great philosophy that just because it's urgent doesn't mean it's an emergency, which I feel like really is important right now in kitchen culture. Um, Remaining calm. How do you sort of infuse that into your staff?
I don't know. I think it has happened organically. I think them watching us work. We have definitely had incidents where one of our cooks has lost their cool. That's only happened once or twice, I think.
Not bad for 2 years.
I'm going to say, I mean, it does happen. People lose their cool.
Yeah, I think that it comes down to really, I hate to use this word, but we try to set like a calm and fun vibe during service. It comes down to the way that we address the team during our pre-shifts. We always try to end with something fun, whether it's, a fact of the day or stretching or
synchronizing hums.
Sometimes we all try to harmonize together, but we try to get everyone to get all the stress out of the way during prep, which I think is it's the biggest success that we found, is try to get all of the work out of the way early, and then dinner service is really just kind of going with the flow and entertaining people.
I love the way you bring everybody together. It creates a really thoughtful environment for the people who you're working with. Whether it's all humming or rose and thorn, or it's a way to start it off. It sounds like on a high note, because so many people walk off the streets, whether it's people who are sitting at your restaurant or people who work for you. They had a bad day. They had a fight with their significant other, somebody's sick, blah, blah, blah. Like coming in and feeling that work is a safe space is, kind of refreshing.
Yeah. It's definitely like a high stress environment, but I think we're just at a point of we work so many hours together that we're this like little dysfunctional family, and we can pick up on cues. We can tell when someone's upset and has come into work with stress that isn't maybe necessarily work related. And that's when Andy and I can have a quiet conversation. And I can tell so-and-so is beating themselves up because they ran something to the wrong position. Let's just shake it off and move past it. And then let's see if we can put them on something else. It's just a constant shuffle.
I think it's leadership with, high standards, but also a lot of empathy.
I think we need a lot more of that out there right now. Tiffani, I know you're very involved, or were very involved with the look of the new place. What was it about the design that was so important to you?
Well, so we have this new build out that was already planned before we came into the picture.
Okay.
And so our recent location in the Voorhees Building in the Gulch was already a planned, build out before we came on board. When we came on board, it was during an interesting kind of interim period where we had the old location and Brian Baxter was still the chef there, and the new location still wasn't ready for us, but we were already moved in and settled and ready to end the tour. Mm-hmm. And so we decided that it would be easier to kind of like shake off the cobwebs and try and have a soft open in the old space first, where we were able to paint it different colors that we'd like, or toy around with any decorations, in the hallways and the restrooms and in some of the furniture choices and the plateware and stuff like that. But ultimately, in the new space, I would say so far our aesthetic has been to just have all of our larder ingredients on display, leave the space to be very soft, kind of feminine and minimalist, because it kind of lets the food speak for itself, and also it's a new location. You don't want to commit to any stylistic choices with like decorating and stuff like that. So we try our best to just mostly decorate with some of our ingredients, and then also we do our flower arrangements with flowers from some of our local shops and stuff like that.
I love that. Okay, so coming to Nashville, being part of the cooking scene, you talked about, how everybody plays so well together in the sandbox. But what are you seeing right now? Probably you don't get out very much because you're working all the time. But I mean, the dining scene is incredible in Nashville. And I just think the last, 15 years, it's just seen this massive expansion, not just culinarily, but like the Gulch is like all brand new. You know what I mean? Like it's just an entirely new, everything feels so shiny and new there. What are you sort of hearing and seeing in Nashville since you both have been so nomadic and now you sort of put down roots for a little bit? When you do get a day off, where do you like to go? What do you like? And what's exciting you now?
I mean, there's quite a lot, and there's always something new, which I think is really exciting about Nashville. We're lucky enough to have, someone like Julio over at Maíz de la Vida is an amazing restaurant right across, not even the street, right across the alleyway from Catbird Seat.
Mm-hmm.
We like the old standbys that we would go to before we even lived in Nashville, like Redheaded Stranger. I think a lot of the times go towards comfort food.
Yeah, for sure. And we also live in South Nashville on the border of Antioch, so we have access to some really amazing Thai food and Mexican food and things like that. And so because that's where we live, that's typically what we'll eat on our day off. But if we're talking, we actually have time to sit down and eat like human beings. Like we'll go to Locust for breakfast, we'll go to Bastion for dinner. We just went there last week for Andy's birthday. We love Audrey. Sam Jett's a good friend of ours. We love to eat there. And it's really amazing because a lot of these chefs have the same ethos of us too. And so if we eat at their restaurants, not saying that it feels like work, but we can say like, oh, how are they able to get this? I didn't see any of this on the farmer's market list. And then we can have those conversations with the chefs and kind of like start to brainstorm and get creatively charged for some of our next menu changes too.
Well, I have to assume when you're serving that many dishes a night, like your curiosity has to be at a peak all the time. Like you have to always be like looking at things and getting inspired. What would you say right now is inspiring you both the most?
I mean, kind of in the middle of getting all of the new green stuff for the year. It was brown and orange food season for quite a few months, and now we're
yes,
getting
it was.
all
and it
of
was
the
really
fruits
cold.
So definitely just letting the produce inspire us.
When do you start canning? Are you constantly preserving and canning? Is that just a constant? And do you have the space for that?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So because our larder is very much a living and breathing thing, it tells us when certain ingredients are coming into style. Or over at, the bar program that we serve out of our wine lounge. And so, it's constantly rotating in and out. There were certain times of the year, like now, for example, where we start to run out of space and containers, but that's kind of forcing us to think outside of the box as far as our new menu changes are concerned, because we do change the menu very, very often.
I can't. There's here in DC at the Renwick Gallery, it's an exhibit right now is all about country fairs. But one of the exhibits, aside from the huge butter cow, which is refrigerated and amazing, is a larder. And it's just like a pyramid of canned goods. And it's so beautiful and it's displayed so pretty. And I think it's so important that people recognize how food is is beautiful, right? Like it is a piece of art in that capacity, not just always on the plate, but how we preserve it, take care of it, don't waste it, and etc. I want to, before I wrap you guys up, you've got all these accolades. I know you sort of shy away from them a little bit, but what's the most exciting part about that for you?
I mean, I think it's recognition for all the hard work.
I really love what it does for our team because I am very much aware that what we're doing is a residency and our team is committed to us for the amount of time that we'll be at the Catbird Seat. But having all of these accolades and decorations for the restaurant and during our time at Catbird helps to give them job security in the future. And I think also, helps them kind of decide where they want their next steps to be and ensures that they'll have the freedom to make those decisions on their own terms. And so that's where I get really excited about the accolades. But for the most part, I don't want anybody to know who I am or look at me.
Okay, couple rapid fire questions. And I love that your team gets the accolades too, because it is for everybody. Rapid fire questions. So earlier, Andy, we talked about like the vibe of the space, right? So what is one of the albums or what music is currently fueling prep?
Prep.
Oh, we have a collab jam.
During prep,
Yes.
first person that gets in the morning, we'll start a jam on Spotify, and then everybody joins in, and it's actually everyone that works there adding songs to the queue for prep.
And sometimes there's a theme.
It could be anything.
Sometimes the theme is like, we're just listening to emo music today. Other times it's pop music. Other times it's R&B. And everybody's just going song for song and adding things to the queue.
Yeah.
That's so fun.
Yeah. It could go from hip hop to metal in very quickly.
I mean, it should, right? Shake it up. I love that. Okay. And Tiffani, for you right now, let's see, what's a good rapid one for you? Okay. One food trend you are completely over.
One food trend I am completely over.
Did I stump you?
This one. No. Man, that one's really tough. I honestly, I don't know if I eat out often enough to be able to make such a grandiose statement.
It's not a grandiose, it's your personal preference. But Andy, it sounds like you have one. What are you over?
Tiff doesn't like truffles, I'll say that.
Oh yeah, I hate truffles. Well, which is ironic because I have a dish on the menu right now that highlights truffles in two ways, but I don't personally enjoy them. Yeah, I'm just over truffles, man. As a culinary student, I hated working with them because the smell. And then as a line cook in New York City, I always ended up on a station where I was making truffle butter, truffle this, truffle that. And I remember coming home and reeking of it. And I just, I think that truffles are very special and they should be used sparingly for sure.
I could not agree. I love truffles personally, but I do think that they're overused and they're special, and that's how I want them. I want them special. I feel the same way about, really good caviar. Like really good caviar is special. And so I wanted to maintain that uniqueness.
Yeah, I feel like, oftentimes truffles are a go-to for somebody to make a VIP feel special or to complete a Valentine's Day menu or something. And then it's like, okay, we can just do an upcharge of grating a ton of truffles on top of this thing that already tasted perfect, as opposed to thinking of a way to use it to highlight different flavors or make it the center if that's what you're going to do. I don't know. I think truffles as an afterthought is kind of what I'm over.
I get that. All right. Well, this was great. First of all, thank you both so much for joining me today. I have actually stood outside the restaurant in its new location. I was upstairs, the restaurant upstairs. Is that Patterson? Wait, what was I at? Yeah, right? Patterson. Yes, I was upstairs. So I stood outside your door. But I'm very excited to come back and see you. Will you both be in Chicago? Okay. Well, then I will look forward to seeing you both there. It's going to be an exciting time. So I want to thank you both, Tiffani Ortiz and Andy Doubrava, for joining me today from Catbird Seat. And thank you to the listeners for tuning in, or you're watching this on YouTube. I love that I get to go down these rabbit holes with chefs who are constantly curious and constantly looking to change the way, not just that we eat, but how we think and what winds up on the plate. So thank you so much to the guests for joining me, and thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to follow me at NYCCI, NELLIS, on all the platforms, but especially on Insta, because that's where I take you on my travels, and you can see exactly what I've been doing. And don't forget to check out the listareyounit.com, the online e-zine that tells you everything happening in the DMV. Thanks again to those who are joining me today. Be safe out there and have a delicious week.
Produced by Heartcast Media.